Is this ridiculous? You turn on your camera phone and you want to film something very pretty on the floor, and then instead the camera angle is switched to your own fat, ugly face. Let me see if I can switch it the right way. Okay, I want to talk about the UFOs in my sewing room. I think everyone who quilts got these unfinished objects in their sewing stash, and this is mine. It's just the top quilt, and it has taken me eons to get this far. And it's very um, intricate, is a nice word, right? But it's beautiful, right? But the issue is that I keep taking it out year after year, work a little bit on it, put it back, um, and it's just very annoying work to do. How can I? Because as you can see, it's like stitched on top with embroidery thread. So it makes it just a tedious job. But I was thinking that one of the ways that I could continue this year working on this quilt was to address the back side of it, because I don't just want a white backside, because yeah, I think that it can take a little color. So I got this crazy idea to dig out all my fabrics, and my fabric um, stash is not that big. So I'm literally going to work with fat quarters, kind of scraps, and then see if I can give myself a patchwork inspired backing for this quilt here. I love, love, love this. This is the kind of patchwork style that I really love. And the way that I made this was just to take tiny squares and then put them into some sort of a color coordination. And then I kept the colors on top in like really light ochreish tones. And then when you move downwards, you meet some purple and then end in a blue tone. But now I'm just looking at patchwork that I have made that sparks joy to think what I can do for the back fabric of that quilt I showed before. But this is one of the very likable um, piece of work that I have done. So I took that out, and then I love this one. This is a long one that we use for our couch, and the couch is like caramel leather. Um, so it's like really, um, that warm quin gold color. So that's why I used some satin squares, but basically the same recipe, where you take tiny, tiny squares and stitch them together. I really love this kind of patchwork. And then I had to prolong the ends because the couch is like super long. So, yeah, that's also an option. But I can see that I also love this where you take like squares, right? But maybe I can find a pattern that's like in between the tiny squares and the big squares. So, yep, I'm getting inspired. So, I think I want to do some backing based on the color scheme of these fabrics here. And I really love that multiple patchwork look. So, I found a couple of scraps that I think color wise could mix in. And then I got these kind of dark fabrics that I can have as accent color. I'm also thinking about red as an accent color because it pops so well with this turquoise and this bluish uh, theme over here. So yeah, I'm still pondering about it a lot. So over here at my sewing station, you could call it, I have put up my ironing board, and now I'm going to just iron out all these. I think they're called fat quarters, right? I'm just gonna iron them out, and then when I'm ready for it, I'm going to cut them into 5-inch squares because I think a 5-inch would be a good square size for a 9-inch block. So yeah, basically it's just like working with scraps, so I can do all sorts of bad decisions at this moment, because there's so many colors. But I hope that I am judging right to have this very bright turquoise, a little bit pinkish tone for the majority of the half. What's it called? The majority of the blocks. So yeah, no, it's going to be exciting. Okay, so I ironed the fabric and then I cut it out into 5-inch squares. And then I'm working on this block design here where I think I'm gonna be consistent by having a red center, a white, a blue accent, a gray, and then a mid-tone, and then bright flower squares in the edges. And then I'm planning on doing a disappearing 9 block pattern where you cut this up and then you flip some of the sections around so you don't get that 9 block um, pattern style. Yeah. But this is all my fabric. It's not a lot, but I get by. And this is actually why I think I want to make this patchwork um, back fabric for the quilt, because I don't have that large a piece of fabric that could wrap the whole back of the quilt. But I do have a lot of these bundles of fat quarters. So I just basically took from these 2 tiny cases here, and that's how I store my bundles of fat quarters. You know, these package. And here I keep all my scraps. I think I need to do some sort of a snippet roll or something. I don't know how to utilize. Not all scraps needs to be kept, but so far I've just tossed it down here. But it's piling up because I have done a lot of project, but never really worked with these tiny scrap things. So yeah, it's a bit annoying to have this bin here taking up space. And then this is the, yeah, it's not even yardage. It's just larger pieces of fabric for things that I thought that I one day would use for a project. But it's very random, and it's not like something that totally sparks joy. And this back here is a pattern from Royal Copenhagen, and it's almost like a curtain. That's how chunky and fat this fabric is. So it's got like limitations. Like it's not that nice to the skin to use for a quilt, in my opinion, because it's got a lot of gusto. So that sturdiness calls for pillowcases, or yeah, I was thinking curtains when I saw it the first time. But yeah, I think that I would do the backing of the quilt this year because I got so exhausted when I took out my embroidery thread box. Because on the top of the quilt, I'm using embroidery thread to piece in the small pieces. Um, because I just got so exhausted thinking about all that needlework. So I think I'm gonna close the lid on this cigar box and put it back in the cabin. And then this year, just focus on getting myself a likable sort of backing for the quilt. I told you guys, it's like a work in progress. It takes like a long time to finish up a UFO. So, yep. So, the general idea is that you take a block, then you cut down the middle of it, then you flip two squares, turn them, and then you stitch them together and have created a new block. So, it's done. I love, love, love the way it turned out. It is exactly what I was hoping for. Like this very dense patchwork look. Remember that this is the backing of the quilt. The quilt top itself is down here on the floor. And I got a lot of blue tones and also red in the top of the quilt. So I just simply love that color scheme is carried on to the backing. I know it looks crazy when you look at it from afar, um, but when you rest your eyes on it, you will notice that there actually is a pattern. So it's not that super, super crazy. I love that I preserved many of the 5-inch squares and then a lot of the smaller squares because, sure, when you look at the quilt from afar, um, large squares in patterns looks beautiful and not so messy. But when I'm cuddling up on the couch with a quilt, I sometimes lose the view of the big quilt pattern if it's done in large squares, and I more enjoy that small patchwork style. So I think this is one of those quilts where when I'm wrapped up in it in the couch, I will appreciate these tiny small patchwork assembled squares a ton. But for sure, I know when you just look at it from afar, it looks so super messy. But I really really love it. I love that very dense patchwork look to this very clean top of the quilt with a lot of air and white areas. So yeah, I still got two squares to fill out in the top of the quilt and then a lot of stitching with embroidery thread to be done. So I don't think it's gonna be today that I start working on the either finishing it or starting up um, what's left to do on this one. Yeah, I'm just rambling. But basically I just wanted to show the progress so far of my UFO unfinished project in my sewing station. Bye bye.